Hey man, ever wonder why your gut was right about her? There's a shocking study on female loyalty so revealing, so raw, that Harvard itself censored it. Not because it was wrong, but because it was brutally honest. And once you understand what it uncovered about female psychology, attraction dynamics, and how deeply emotional manipulation shapes modern relationships, you'll never see things the same way again. They didn't want you to know how subconscious attraction can override commitment, or why loyalty versus desire isn't even a fair fight in the female mind. But you're about to learn it all. And if you miss a single part, you'll keep playing a game without knowing the rules. If this kind of truth resonates with you, drop a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let's make this conversation bigger than silence. You never know who might wake up because you clicked that share button. This is where the real understanding begins. Not in judgment, but in clarity. Let's break it down from the core. What the study really revealed about female loyalty and why it was silenced. Most guys think loyalty is about rules, but in this shocking study, what they found turned that idea upside down. Imagine putting dozens of women in controlled emotional settings, then exposing them to different types of male behavior. What happened next wasn't just unexpected, it was brutally eye-opening. The results showed that female psychology operates under its own set of invisible rules, rules shaped by subconscious attraction, not social agreements. And once Harvard realized what was being exposed, the reaction was swift. Silence the study, bury the findings, protect the narrative. Here's where it gets wild. When tested in scenarios involving high-value men, emotional uncertainty, and power contrast, women consistently responded not with loyalty, but with shifting desire. Loyalty wasn't a constant, it was conditional, tied more to how she felt in the moment than to any past commitment. That's what the study exposed. It shattered the illusion that relationship power rests in vows or titles. It lives in attraction dynamics and her emotional response to masculine presence. This is psychological realism, not fantasy. And it scared the establishment to its core. You might be asking, but how exactly did they measure that? Through something called emotional leverage, testing how women behaved when given subtle emotional tension versus comfort. The outcome? When women sensed a man had options, purpose, or withheld validation, their behavioral instincts shifted toward pursuit. When the man was too available, too stable, interest dropped. This doesn't mean women are bad. It means their wiring follows ancient code, a code that our current culture refuses to acknowledge. But the men who grasp it gain clarity, not confusion. Let me paint the picture for you. One test subject had been in a long-term relationship, happy, stable, supported. Then the researchers introduced a fictional profile, a confident, mysterious man who was emotionally unpredictable. Her response? Heightened curiosity, emotional excitement, and eventually willingness to disconnect from her partner. That's how the study captured the raw truth of loyalty versus desire. Loyalty felt like duty, desire felt alive. And when placed side by side, female nature leaned toward what stimulated her emotionally, not what made sense logically. Now ask yourself, how many men are operating from the wrong map? They believe consistency equals value, that showing love means staying present at all costs. But if you're not aware of attraction mechanics, you may be giving her what she says she wants, while killing the subconscious attraction that keeps her engaged. That's the silent sabotage. This study didn't just collect data, it confirmed what countless men have felt but couldn't explain. And once that got out, Harvard knew it would ignite a wave of male awareness they weren't ready for. And, let's be honest, most men today are groomed to ignore their instincts. Social conditioning tells them to be soft, to overcommunicate, to be endlessly understanding. But this research reminded us that biology doesn't care about politics. Female psychology responds to tension, polarity, and presence, not just words. That's why so many guys feel blindsided after doing everything right. The truth is, they were taught wrong. The game was never about perfection. It was about reading the signals, holding the masculine frame, and understanding that desire isn't negotiated, it's triggered. There's a reason this study hit a nerve. It didn't just highlight women's patterns. It exposed how deeply men misunderstand their own confidence authority. And here's where it starts to hurt. When a man operates from insecurity masked as love, he unconsciously hands over power. He becomes dependent on her validation to feel worthy. And nothing repels female nature faster than a man unsure of himself. This wasn't just science. It was a mirror most weren't ready to face, but you're here. So maybe, just maybe, you are. Let's talk about the moment she starts to pull away. You feel it. The energy changes. Conversations become shorter. She's distracted. You assume it's work, stress, maybe hormones. But the study revealed something deeper. She's not pulling away because you did something wrong. She's reacting to a shift in emotional polarity. The attraction dynamics changed. And her internal radar noticed before her conscious mind did. That's the part they didn't want you to know. Because if you did, you'd stop chasing and start leading. This is where self-mastery comes in. A man who knows how to regulate his energy, his emotions, and his attention becomes magnetic. Not because he's flashy, but because he's centered. Women feel that. They test for it, constantly. Not because they're cruel, but because their biology is wired to seek the highest emotional stimulation. And if you break under pressure, if you explain yourself too much, you dissolve the tension. You kill the very thing she was responding to. The study tracked this shift like clockwork. The patterns repeated with eerie precision. You ever seen a man lose her? Not because he cheated or yelled and boomed out, but because he got too soft, too predictable? That's romantic disillusion in action. The study showed that once emotional novelty dies, so does her engagement. And here's the kicker. Most of the men didn't even see it coming. They were doing everything they'd been told. But the data didn't lie. When her desire hierarchy flipped, when comfort replaced curiosity, her mind began scanning for something else, something unfamiliar, something less emotionally safe. So what keeps her interested? It's not gifts, it's not validation, it's contrast, polarity, emotional rhythm. That's where behavioral instincts play their role. A man who disappears occasionally, who doesn't overshare, who has a life outside of her, triggers pursuit. The study proved that. When male test subjects displayed emotional restraint and purpose-driven distance, female subjects experienced spikes in interest, imagination, and dream activity. Yes, they literally dream more about the men who were slightly unavailable. That's not manipulation. That's nature doing what it's always done. Let me give you something to visualize. Imagine a candle flame. If you place your hand too close, it burns. Too far, you feel nothing. But the right distance, warmth, tension. That's the sweet spot of attraction mechanics. The study revealed that women don't respond linearly. They oscillate. High engagement, then space. Emotional closeness, then withdrawal. The men who danced with that rhythm kept their presence alive in the female subjects' minds far longer than the nice guys. Why? Because they weren't trying to be liked. They were just being real. And here's where it gets personal. There was one man in the study, let's call him Daniel. Mid-30s, average looks, quiet confidence. Not the loudest guy in the room, but solid. His secret? He didn't chase. He didn't explain himself. He maintained his frame even when female participants tried to pull him emotionally. They tested his reactions, flirted, pushed boundaries, and he stayed grounded. What happened? Nearly every woman rated him as mysteriously attractive. He activated their subconscious attraction, not by effort, but by presence. Daniel didn't have tricks. He had male self-respect. He had boundaries. When one participant tried to provoke him emotionally, he smiled and changed the subject. No overreaction, no passive aggression. That moment shifted everything. She later confessed to researchers that she couldn't stop thinking about him, not because of what he said, but because of how unshakable he felt. That's masculine growth in real time. That's how a man becomes unforgettable, by mastering himself, not controlling her. The study proved this over and over again. The pattern is undeniable. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most men are trained to behave in ways that actually weaken their influence in modern relationships. They think sharing every thought builds connection. They think being soft all the time keeps her close. But the red pill mindset recognizes something deeper. Women don't want a man who gives them everything. They want a man who gives them something to respond to. That's the heartbeat of emotional leverage. And the moment you start applying that awareness, you stop living confused and start living in control. The biggest lie sold to men today, that expressing endless vulnerability equals strength. But when overdone, it actually dissolves polarity. The study observed this too. The more male participants sought emotional validation from the women, the faster the connection died. It's not about being cold, it's about being grounded. When a man has confidence authority, he knows when to speak, when to hold space, and when to walk away. That contrast creates energy. And energy, not effort, is what sustains long-term subconscious attraction. Now think about this. If Harvard didn't want this research public, what else are you not being told? You've probably been living with half the truth your entire life. And every time you try harder and get less, you feel that frustration deep in your chest. You're not crazy. You're just uninformed. This video is a chance to flip that. So here's the deal. If this kind of content is finally putting words to things you've always sensed but couldn't explain, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment if you've ever experienced what we're talking about. Subscribe. Because trust me, we're just getting started. The next truth might hit even harder. You see, the real danger isn't her changing. It's you not adapting. Most men respond to emotional distance with panic. They start over-explaining, apologizing for things they didn't do or begging for clarity. That's emotional submission. The study revealed this behavior caused a complete drop in attraction. Why? Because it shifted the power dynamic. It violated her internal need to feel pulled towards strength. This is relationship power in action. And once a man gives it up, it's rarely recovered, unless he learns to stand still when everything shakes. So what do you do when you feel her slipping away? First, you stop chasing. Second, you focus on restoring your masculine frame. That means setting emotional boundaries, not as punishment, but as leadership. For example, limit access when disrespected, pull back when energy isn't reciprocated, speak less, move with intention. This isn't about playing games, it's about rebalancing polarity. You're not punishing her, you're protecting your standard. That's the secret to boundary enforcement. And every man must learn it if he wants to stay in control. Remember Daniel? The guy from the study? There was a moment when one of the female participants tried to test his attention by talking about another man. Most guys would have reacted with jealousy or insecurity. Daniel didn't flinch. He smiled, sipped his drink, and shifted the topic. Why? Because his sense of value wasn't based on her approval. That's male self-respect in action. And the result? Her interest tripled. Not because he chased her, but because he didn't. The lesson? Don't prove your worth. Own it. This is where most men break. They confuse emotional manipulation with connection. They assume that if she's upset, they've failed. But in the study, the men who didn't bend to every emotional storm were the ones who kept her engaged. She didn't want perfection. She wanted presence. Presence under pressure. That's the root of masculine growth. A man who can sit in discomfort without begging for peace becomes unforgettable, not because he fixed her emotions, but because he didn't let them break his frame. Most men underestimate the impact of emotional detachment. They think pulling back means losing her. But the study showed the opposite. When men stopped centering their lives around the woman, she leaned in. Why? Because it reintroduced attraction dynamics. When a man is focused on mission over emotion, his presence becomes rare, and rarity creates value. That's not arrogance, it's truth. In modern relationships, availability is often mistaken for weakness. So when you take space to focus on your growth, you don't lose her. You remind her of what drew her in. Let's be clear, this isn't about playing hard to get. It's about being hard to forget. The study tracked brain activity, yes, actual neuroscience, and found that women had stronger emotional responses to unpredictable male behavior. Men who maintained self-mastery, held mystery, and didn't over-communicate triggered longer emotional retention. In simple terms, they stayed on her mind. This is the science behind subconscious attraction. And most men, raised to overexpress everything, are erasing themselves from memory without even knowing it. Now here's something that'll hit deep. One participant after the experiment ended said this: "I couldn't stop thinking about the guy who didn't try." That's psychological realism. It's not the loud gestures that last. It's the emotional fingerprints, the slight tension, the unknown, the unspoken confidence. The guy who didn't need to convince her. That's what your presence should feel like. A mystery she wants to solve, not a checklist she's already completed. When you become too available, she closes the book. When you remain layered, she keeps reading. Let's talk about truth over comfort. Most men avoid this kind of conversation because it threatens their beliefs. But look around. How's comfort working for them? Divorces are up. Loneliness is epidemic. Emotional burnout is real. Why? Because they built their identity around being chosen, not being solid. When you swallow hard truths, you stop being fragile. You stop needing permission to be masculine. That's the mindset shift that separates men who attract respect from those who chase it. Red pill mindset isn't bitterness. It's awakening. And awakening means responsibility. You can't unsee what you now know. This is the cost of awareness. Once you understand female psychology, you can no longer operate from fantasy. You must watch, observe, and lead with clarity. That doesn't mean distrust, it means discernment. Start noticing patterns, not promises. Energy, not words. Test consistency. Reward respect. Withdraw from chaos. That's how you regain relationship power, by refusing to trade your standards for approval. This is what makes you strong, not loud, not aggressive, clear. The study didn't suggest that women are villains. It revealed that women are human, driven by internal programming that's often misunderstood. Female nature isn't evil, but it is reactive. Reactive to tone, timing, energy, presence. And when a man loses himself trying to win her, she feels it. The tension breaks. So if you want her loyalty, don't beg for it. Inspire it. Show her something rare. A man who doesn't fear her storms, who doesn't need to be needed. That's not cold. That's core strength. Want a simple shift that works? Stop explaining your worth. Start embodying it. That means less talking, more doing. Less reacting, more observing. Choose silence over desperation. Choose action over validation seeking. Get in shape. Master your craft. Learn to sit alone without panic. That's how you rise on her desire hierarchy, by becoming the kind of man who would never put her above his mission. That's not toxicity, that's clarity. The kind this study exposed, and the kind most men are still blind to. Every man reaches a moment when he realizes playing nice doesn't guarantee loyalty. That moment hits hard. It's usually after she's already gone, mentally or physically. And in hindsight, the signs were always there. The study made this brutally clear. Her pullback wasn't random, it was a response. A reaction to your energy shifting from leader to follower, to your frame dissolving under pressure. If you felt this before, you're not alone. But now, you don't have to repeat it, because now you're seeing the modern dating truth. There's nothing more dangerous than a man with no mission. Because without direction, he drifts. And women can feel drift. It kills polarity, it erases mystery. That's why your focus must come first, always. When the study examined long-term attraction, the only consistent trait among desired men was self-mastery. Not wealth, not looks, mastery. A man building something greater than himself. That energy bleeds into every interaction. She doesn't fall for the man. She falls for his masculine frame, his movement, his momentum. You ever notice how some men walk into a room and don't need to speak to be noticed? That's presence. And it's not an accident. It's built in silence, through reps, through discomfort, through late nights when no one claps and you show up anyway. That's where confidence authority is forged. And when you carry it into a relationship, it changes everything. She doesn't test you to break you. She tests you to find out if you're real. Most men fail those tests because they're too afraid to fail. Let me say it straight. She doesn't want control. She wants to feel safe under yours. Not the kind that dominates, but the kind that grounds. The kind that gives her emotional freedom without losing your own. That's what the study highlighted. Women felt most loyal not when men gave them everything, but when men gave them stability with edges, not walls, but standards. That's the art of boundary enforcement. If you don't have it, she becomes the leader by default. And neither of you really want that. So here's what you can start doing today. Journal your emotional triggers. Notice where you seek approval. Track how you react when she pulls back. Then reverse it. Do less, wait more. Speak with clarity, not emotion. Build something that isn't about her. That's how you create emotional leverage. It doesn't come from control. It comes from being non-reactive, from knowing that your value doesn't decrease just because someone else can't see it. That's the male awareness most never tap into, because they're too busy trying to be chosen. Real loyalty isn't demanded. It's earned through presence, through restraint, through leadership. And if this censored Harvard study taught us anything, it's that women don't stay loyal to the most loving man. They stay loyal to the man who keeps her emotionally engaged. A man she looks at and still wonders, what's he thinking? Not because he's hiding, but because he's whole. The ones who give everything away too soon, they get forgotten. The ones who stay rooted, they get remembered. Not every time, but far more than you think. So now you know what they tried to hide, what most men never figure out. This isn't about playing games or hating women. It's about seeing the rules, understanding the field, and choosing to show up with strength, not desperation. Because in the end, the man who wins isn't the one she clings to. It's the one she can't quite figure out, but can't seem to let go of. And that's just the beginning of what this study really opened up. Truths that could change everything if you're ready to go deeper. So, now that you've seen the truth, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to keep pretending that loyalty is something you can buy with love, gifts, or words? Or are you ready to become the kind of man who earns it? Not by chasing it, but by embodying strength, clarity, and leadership. Because the truth is, she already knows who you are. The only question left is, do you? Drop this in the comments if you're ready to shift everything. No more illusions, I lead now. Oh, thanks for sticking with me all the way through. That alone already puts you miles ahead of most men who stop at what's easy to hear. What we're building here isn't noise, it's awareness, and you're part of it. If this video hit a nerve, helped you see clearer, or gave you the tools you didn't know you needed, smash that like, share this with a brother who's still lost in the fog, subscribe, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss the next layer of truth. We're only just getting started.